I was really honest with the guys. I sat down with them and I'm like, hey, you're not going to like everything that I say, but if I'm straight with you, then I feel that we'll move forward. If I try and make everything sound like sunshine and rainbows, we're not going to get the best out of this.
That's Aprilia MotoGP racer and tester Bradley Smith. He'll be one of our featured guests on this week's podcast. Well, welcome everyone to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg and Jason is here. What's up, JP?
Hey, Greg. I'm good. Just typical. I did my last run at Chuckwalla yesterday, so we went out there on Monday. I taught a bunch of motor officers yesterday. It was pretty fun on full dressed police bikes, BMWs. It was fun though. It was a good time. And now it's getting a little warm out at Chuckwalla, so that'll be the last time out there for me until September. And
wow.
Yeah, got home late last night. And then, you and I are knocking out this podcast and getting on. Well, I'm getting on a plane. This is a home race for you. So I'm going to jump on a plane tomorrow and head your way.
I have to ask, did you get like a get out of jail free card from any one of the officers that you were trained? You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of cheesy to ask, but I'm just saying it helps.
Everybody asks.
Yeah.
No, one of my really good friends, Alex Fuller, the guy I've done some work with,
Alex Fuller, like, you mean Fantasy Supercross Alex Fuller?
Yeah, and he hasn't really given...
Forget that dodo bird.
He hasn't given me any grief about that. But he, and we're going to get to this Fantasy Supercross. I got something I got to pick with you here on that deal.
Oh, boy. Right.
Yeah. No, but Alex's whole getup this year, it wasn't like he did it on purpose, but his whole setup was black and white. So he looks like a police officer out when he rides. His leathers are black and white. He wears like this plain white helmet. And I really wanted to do a shot yesterday of him riding down the front straightaway. He was riding my bike, riding my ZX-10 yesterday, and he's riding it down the front straightaway, and he's got all these cops following him. I thought, man, it would be such a fun picture. But as usual, you just get too busy and you don't get a chance to really do the fun stuff sometimes. But no, it was a good time. It was a great day. And what about you? How's the last couple of days since we talked with our MotoAmerica podcast? How's it been for you?
Good. Just busy at home and, doing research and other stuff going on, and archery stuff coming up, the race this weekend, just kind of excited. I need to order a new seat for my Triumph Street Triple R, and I'm just trying to make the decision on that. It's like a big deal for me to pull a trigger on a $500 saddle, but
that's funny. You're not flashing that Weir Championship in them and just getting a free one?
Sending resumes in? I think I missed the window.
Sending in your resumes and telling them who you are? Come on,
I think I missed the window for sponsorship this season, so...
Well,
and I don't want to miss the summer.
I know that you could do it. How great is it? We got Bradley Smith on our show today, which is great. And I know you had a good chat with him. And, coming up this weekend is our MotoAmerica VIR event. We did a full-blown podcast about it earlier this week, episode number 28. For those who want to watch, it was one that Greg and I did on Monday. But, Greg, the forecast keeps changing. I know it does that back there where you are. It's 50% chance of some rain could be on the track. Like, anything you want to talk about with that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, right, we didn't really talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, I have this fantasy, like, if it rains, that we're going to have Matthew Skultz possibly up in the mix winning a race, even though he's got the newer electronics. I know that when we had kind of a throwaway rain session, was that at COTA or no, Road Atlanta?
Yes.
I know we had a throwaway rain session on one of those, and they went out there and tested quite a bit. With Herschel looking at all the data and everything. The Ducati, I know, I think if Kyle Wyman has the electronics, I'm not sure if they're going to plug him in for VIR or not. I haven't had a chance to talk to Kyle about it, but I know the stock Ducati electronics are good, and that bike is unbelievable in the rain. So there's part of me that's kind of going like, like for the race fans, of course, I don't want any rain. I want everybody to show up. But on the other hand, already this early in the season, I would love to see who's got their rain setup dialed in the Superbike class. Talking specifically.
It's funny that we're talking about this real quick because, like I said, we did do a full podcast on this, but I think Matthew will be up there regardless, number one. Number two, if it does rain, let's hope there's no lightning because that's what's going to stop procedures if there's lightning, and that'll be hard for us with our schedule this weekend. So hopefully if it rains, it's just rain. But you know what else I'm thinking about is if I'm a guy that maybe needs that, this is a 2-day event. If it's raining and I'm a privateer guy, I might be kind of happy that it rains. Like, You know what I mean? Rather than have any dry, like if it was wet on a kind of a condensed schedule like we have, it's going to prevent a lot of people from maybe getting up to speed that I might not otherwise be able to keep up with.
Yeah, you want it to rain early. You if it's going to rain and you're a privateer, you'd like to see it done Saturday morning when there's 45-minute sessions. I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
It just
hey, look, there are people, by the way, when I was in Paris, Texas at the archery event over the weekend, the ASA archery event, I had 2 people approach me about they listen to the podcast. They're interested in it. They have jobs where they listen to podcasts. So knowing me and I do this podcast, they've been listening and know nothing about motorcycles, but they continue to listen. So just for those that may be new to the podcast, and we've got to start thinking about that audience too, Jay, is tell us how we race in the rain, and you know what I mean, like how it's done, like what equipment do we use in the rain, that type of thing.
Well, the rain tires are obviously the big key here, and it's one of the things that I wish that all of our listeners could at least try once if you haven't before. Rain tires have come such a long way, and it's actually pretty cool that you can go out and enjoy your sport that you love in the wet. Now, the detractions to that are obviously people feel that you're taking a lot bigger risks, and I agree at some places for sure. Some of the tracks that I've raced around the world on have been so amazing, the grip level. You're actually out there laughing because you can't believe how much grip there is in the rain. Where was it that you raced in the rain and you couldn't believe how much grip there was? There was somewhere, I remember you telling me.
Yeah. Gingerman Raceway. The first year of Gingerman Raceway, and the first time I ever put my knee down in the rain, and it was actually my first time ever on full rain tires. And the only reason I got those was because my competition had them. And I was like, well, I've got to go do it now. And wow. I mean, that's all I can say.
It's so fun, isn't it?
And that was a long time ago.
It was 25 years ago, wasn't it, or something? So, yeah, but...
Settle down.
But, yeah, and the other, obviously, bad part is your bike just gets filthy, which is kind of a drag as far as having to clean it.
That's true.
That's a bummer. But racing in the rain, as you know, everybody kind of calls it the ultimate equalizer because, like I said just now, it might afford the opportunity for some people that maybe otherwise wouldn't be as close to some of the factory bikes and Superbike. It might give them a better shot. I'm thinking about we haven't. Who knows the state of what Jake Gagne's in right now? I haven't reached out to him. I'm hoping that he's doing okay after Coda. And if it was to rain for somebody like him with an injury that he's still trying to battle, this might be a way. A 2-day weekend for him is going to be good. He's not going to have to exert as much energy. But if it rains, you're not going to be using your legs quite as much as you would in the dry, kind of hustling that bike around, especially at VIR with a lot of change of directions. So. It might be a good thing for him. I think about the super sport classes and some of the twins classes where there might be guys that we don't know that are really good rain riders that all of a sudden are kind of right there. I remember when we used to go to Loudon all the time, if it rained, there was always going to be somebody up front. And, but yeah, I just think racing in the rain is a whole unique thing. I think tires and stuff they've come such a long way that you can actually race in the rain rather than just kind of ride around in it. So, and it just adds a whole nother element to things. So
speaking
we're gonna have a good time.
of like real quick, speaking of New Hampshire, did you see Scott Greenwood won a bunch of races at New Hampshire? I think I saw it on roadracingworld.com. Scott Greenwood won. You remember Scott?
I remember the name, and I remember. I mean, Scott was racing way back when I was racing. I think still wasn't he? Like,
dude, 100%. This is how I know like Scott Greenwood. I think I met him a couple times.
Yep.
Nice cat and all that stuff. But Scott Greenwood is in the record books of winning an AMA Supersport race at Loudon, New Hampshire. That was the year that, remember, all the racers protested the Supersport race, and New Hampshire decided to put up that big purse, and he's a local guy, so he went. And the AMA didn't say at the time, they didn't say, no, we're not going to race this. They said, if you guys want to protest, go ahead and protest. And they still ran the race. So Scott Greenwood went in the record book as winning a Supersport race.
Yep, for winning that race. Yeah, good for him. Yeah, that's so cool. He's still riding. I love it. Is it still all the same configuration and stuff up there? Do you know?
I think they've changed a little bit of it. But I haven't been up there in many, many years. That was, I hate to drag this out of the closet, but that was the site of my first top 10 finish race, first top 10 of 2 ever. Racing an AMA National.
And there we go, folks. There you go. We've talked about G-Dub in the rain and his top 10 with 12 on the grid. Awesome. Can we move on, please?
There was not 12 on the... Dude, you better knock it off. Hey, but you know my family. Can you imagine? I had no pit board. I couldn't afford a pit board back then. So I had Jeff White standing on the wall giving me a sign with his 2 hands of like distance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I bet he was giving you a sign. I bet.
Yeah, he sure was. All right, whatever. Let's move on to MotoGP.
Yeah, please, can we?
Yeah, sure. Because this weekend, Jerez is coming up, or Jerez, or however, Jerez. Like, there's a lot of different ways to pronounce it.
Yep.
We're headed for round 4. And in the Premier class, MotoGP, Ducati's Andrea Dovizioso leads the way with 54 points. Valentino Rossi has 51. Rins has 49. Marquez off of the big disaster. After round 3, 45 points. And getting a wild card this weekend is Aprilia test rider Bradley Smith. Now, we have not spoken with Bradley, Jason, since, let's see, like November 28th. That was our 5th show, if you can believe it, way back then. So I start off with something, real generic. What's new since we spoke last?
Yeah, so obviously last time we spoke, MotoE was going ahead. We had a little bit of a chat about how we thought it was all going to go. Little did I realize that we were going to have a big bonfire at the end of the first test, and everything's been put back, which is a great shame, because seeing the work that all the teams, all the suppliers, and Energica themselves had put in, to have something like that was no fault of their own happen, was obviously a big blow for the championship. But the good thing is we still get to race. I think the first one now starts in July, so we're like 3 months behind, but we still get the same amount of races. So instead of doing 5 rounds and 6 races, we're doing 4 rounds and 6 races. And then they just announced that at the test that we're going to be doing in June, that we'll be doing like a mock race on the last day, and they've put up a motorcycle for grabs for the winner. So suddenly that gets a lot more competitive, and I think everyone will be shooting for one of those. So that's it from the electric bike side. From the MotoGP side, we've done quite a lot. Obviously started the new season. The 2019 bike looks really competitive compared to the 2018. Aleix, I think, had 2 9th places in the opening 2 rounds, and then got a DNF. Iannone has been making steady steps forward, and I think he was fighting just outside the top 10 in Austin. So I think everyone's happy with the progress that's being made. I got to do a wildcard in Qatar. Wasn't a whole lot of fun because we weren't really ready. So my first one will be this weekend in Jerez, that I feel that we're a lot more prepared, and I've got a bit more of a chance of doing something.
So that's the update on Bradley Smith, just giving us the generic stuff. Anything in that really that you want to comment on before we get into the next little soundbite from Bradley?
I just like Bradley's whole tone. He's excited about everything, he's very positive about the Aprilia stuff, as we've seen and heard from him. And I think the fact that he's still excited about the e-bike racing. You heard him say there that, obviously it was no fault of anybody's, and all the work and commitment that people had put in before the fire there at Jerez. What was it, a great couple of months ago now, huh? 6 weeks ago, maybe, with all the bikes and all the equipment that went down. And man, I can't imagine, we don't hear about it that much over here, but can't imagine the rallying of support they must have received and trying to get that kind of going again. So, again, I'm excited about that. And it sounds like he still is, which is good. And he's a busy boy, man. He's got a lot on his plate.
He is. And in that conversation, dude, I told him, I was like, look, it seems like it's been really well documented at this point that Aprilia is loving what you're bringing to the table. And I was asking him, like, what do you think it is that you're bringing to the table?
I think at the end of the day, it's just someone with a little bit of direction. I think that's really what it is. I was really honest with the guys. I sat down with them and I'm like, hey, you're not going to like everything that I say, but if I'm straight with you, then I feel that we'll move forward. If I try and make everything sound like sunshine and rainbows, we're not going to get the best out of this. So let me tell you everything I think, and then we can move forward, like in terms of priority, a priority list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's just how I've worked. I've gone into, every day with a clear plan, give a clear conclusion at the end of the day in terms of what worked and what didn't. Like the other day, I was sat down at a test and we tried a new traction control theory. And I'm like, you guys need to put this directly in the bike for both riders to start in Argentina. I said, I don't want to hear that you've ridden Argentina weekend without putting this in this bike. This package is ready to go. And they're like, we've never had a rider say that to us, like with that type of definition. And I think that's the thing in a world where you have so many options, so many data acquisition channels, so much adjustment on a MotoGP bike. When a rider comes in and complains about something, there's so many things across the board that you can really say, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. And I'd just like to think that I can just narrow it down with my experience from previous years, with my experience with my last manufacturer. I can narrow it down to, I believe it's on these two roads. We should shoot a bullet up both ends, and then we'll see which one comes out. And I think that that's kind of what they're appreciating, and that's helping the evolution process, and the performance gains to be coming thick and fast.
Now, Jason, you've been a factory superbike rider, and even back then, superbikes had an enormous amount of adjustments to it, but GP bikes even more so. Easy for any company really to get lost, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can't compare those two. I appreciate it, but it's like, that what he's going through now is just so much more advancement in technology than there was, obviously 20 years ago. And I was so green and learning that I needed somebody like Bradley that could have maybe helped me get going on a direction. And I think that when I listen to his tone and what he's saying, his relationship with Aleix and Iannone has to be really strong. In other words, I don't believe that you can have a test rider without the guys that are actually racing the bike weekly putting a tremendous amount of trust into you. When he comes in and he says to the technicians that, hey, you guys, we need this right now. This isn't something that you can mess about with. Let's get on with it in Argentina for first practice. Send these guys out on that. He's also probably got a line of communication open with the riders and saying, hey, you guys, he's got to recognize what their issues are. And then when they go testing, he's probably trying to help whatever issues that the two main riders have. And he's trying to send the team down a direction of like, hey, we have got this significantly better. In other words, he's got to be able to feel what those guys have felt. And then when they go testing, if it's significantly better, he's going to know right off the bat. And you learn that stuff by looking at each other's data. Obviously, he can look at Aleix, he can look at Iannone's data, and he can say, okay, we're doing things very similar here. I'm feeling the same thing as you guys. That way, when they make those adjustments, Greg, they can pinpoint right to the spot where they want to make it better. And if it's better, then those guys get to start with something different. So it's really invaluable for the team to have somebody like Bradley that's putting that bike through the paces and doing it in a way that he's got a direction to go to help the other two.
Yeah, and Aleix on MotoGP.com just a couple days ago had an interview there talking about how awesome, like this is the best team he's ever had. And I definitely think that he likes the direction it's going, obviously with better results and all that kind of stuff. So, looking at the results that Aleix Espargaro is getting on that bike and just the way the bike looks better, from last year's model, I naturally kind of said to Bradley, like, do you take pride in what his full-time race teammates are doing with the bike?
I think so, because at the end of the day, it's a team effort. So not only is this coming from me, this is coming from the technicians, all the guys that work back at headquarters, all the guys that are working on the race team, all the guys that are working on the test team. I think that we all feel that we're part of something. The new introduction of Massimo Rivola into the CEO of Aprilia role, I think that he's made sure that everybody feels part of this effort, and that we have the 100 people that is relatively small in terms of Aprilia, but we have those 100 people all working towards the same goal, which is to get results on Sunday. So yeah, I feel partly responsible for some of the results there, but also from the other side, when you hear the boys complaining about what they're missing, you also feel responsible for that. So you're happy for the positives, and let's say determined when you hear the negatives to try and fix that and give the boys something better for next time out.
I love the well-rounded answer, going from both sides.
It's a probably a lot more of a higher pressure job. It's really hard to get on a bike, I would reckon, and go and be hired at this level specifically to go push these things as hard as you can, especially a company like Aprilia. It's not like he's jumping on a Honda or Suzuki or Ducati, something that has had some success. I mean, you see what Gintoli's done with Suzuki, and now Suzuki's winning. I think it's a lot harder when you're on a bike that hasn't really flourished yet. So even with the KTM that he rode prior and now this bike, and he's been on a Yamaha, as we know, the thing I think that would be most difficult is how are we making that next step? Because you got to remember all the other platforms are moving along still themselves, Greg, right? Like all the main guys, the Ducatis and Hondas and Yamahas, they're continuing to move forward. And the Aprilia's got to make bigger strides, right? So if they go testing somewhere, he's got to continue to find a way to get the Aprilia. If the Yamahas and stuff jump up half a step, he's got to make sure this bike jumps up a full step. And so, and he's just so invested. And again, just listening to what he just said, he obviously talks to the riders an awful lot about what they feel they're missing, what they feel like they'd like. So when he swings a leg over the bike, he's able to kind of understand what they're doing and what they're feeling and trying to change it.
And it's not just him coming up with a solution that creates any problem to go away. The engineers still have to come up with a part, or
Right.
electronic engineers have to come up with an electronics solution, a strategy to work on that. So it will take time. And it seems like that he's had an immediate effect on the bike. A lot of journalists have even said that the 19 bike looks a lot closer to the 17, that the 18 was a bad direction that they went in and really causing some problems. So initially you're going, okay, it's not really that big of a jump to get the bike better, but now it seems like it's going to be that fine tuning area where we start to fine tune it from 9th into 6th. And then once you start playing in that top 6, how do you get it as a race winner? And if I look across the board at the test riders that are available, there's no doubt that Bradley Smith is one of the fastest of them all, and the thing that I kind of was thinking about when I was talking with him, Jay, is if he can do such a good job where by the end of the season, this motorcycle is able to break into the top 6, you think he's going to be worth a lot more money going into 2020 as a test rider than he is right now?
Well, I think that's the advantage that he has. I think if he jumps on another bike and goes fast on it, everybody will be saying, "Oh yeah, the bike's pretty good already. It's this and it's that." That's the advantage for him. And the fact that he gets some wild cards this year, we'll be really able to see. We'll get to see where he measures up. I mean, what was it last year with KTM? And I'm drawing a blank as I start talking to you about this.
What about
KTM's
KTM?
test rider? What's that?
Oh, Mika Kallio.
Kallio. Thank you, Greg.
Yep.
Kallio last year was outperforming a couple of the guys that were. I mean, he was on the bike a lot, and it could be the same thing with Bradley if he goes out and starts, outperforming the Iannone or hanging in with a Leish. I mean, right now I would say that obviously a Leish to me is the better man on that bike than Iannone. So Bradley's getting a chance to test this bike, and then he's getting a chance to go out and race against these guys and kind of see where he's at, because testing and racing are so different. Like being at an open track and testing things is great, but when you've got to defend a position or you're trying to move up the field, feels change a lot. Like the feeling that you get with things can change quite a bit. So we're going to be able to get to watch him, I think 4 times or three more times this year. I think
4, yeah, including Jerez.
Was he at Doha already?
He was at Doha, and then he gets 5 total this year.
So he gets 4 more. Okay, so this weekend will be a good little test for him, because I know he just tested at Jerez too, I believe. So now he's getting to get a chance to race there with those guys.
Yeah, so I shifted my focus on the questions about Jerez, and I wanted his take on the first European round of MotoGP.
Well, what's quite good about Jerez this year is that we've had another resurface. So the grip level is super high. I think the track, let's say, is about 75% resurfaced. And the last 2 tests that I've done there, the grip level's been really, really good. So I think that already starts off as a positive note going into the weekend, because it means close racing. The track is, I would say, quite a fast flowing nature track, although there's no real stop and starts too much. which I think is something that works well with the Aprilia, works well with their chassis. Quite narrow, let's say, so not many overtaking spots available for MotoGP, which I think is another reason why it keeps it quite close racing, and always the famous last corner that we've seen, the epic battles, going in there between, I think, all the way back to Gibernau and Valentino to recently with Mark and Jorge. So, I think everyone also is really excited going into that one because it's the first one back in Europe. It's like everyone's been waiting since Valencia, so they've had best part of 6 months of not actually being to a MotoGP. So not only the Spaniards come out, but people from around the world, they're just like, right, we've missed MotoGP, and you have 110, 120,000 people turning up on Sunday, and there's just something magical about racing in Spain. And the Spanish riders going all out in all categories to kind of be up there. And I think that the racing has been great in the opening 3 rounds. Looking at Moto3, Moto2 and MotoGP, the championships are all close. So I think it's just the little party to begin in Europe, and then we'll be stuck here for the next 8 or 9 races. So we'll enjoy it.
Sounds like a lot of fun racing in front of 110,000 people, though.
Yeah, no, you know what? You're right. And I think the closest I ever come to that was Le Mans, because you get 100,000 people there. It's just the atmosphere. You can't explain it to people because it's just one of those things that you have to be there. I think as a fan, it's amazing to see that many people. As a team or a crew, it's pretty wild. As a rider, it's really, really nuts because you realize that everybody's there to watch you race. And I mean, especially the Spanish, the kids that are racing in Moto2, Moto3, their first experience being in an environment like that as a rider, especially some of these young guys in Moto3 that maybe have never got a chance. Yeah, they've done CEV and they get pretty good crowds, I think, for that too. But when you all of a sudden start seeing 100,000+ people show up and the mountains are just alive the whole time, it's really an exciting thing. So it's relatable in the sense that I've just been to the Le Mans 24-hour, and it's insane how many people come out to watch a 24-hour endurance race. Like, you just have the French have a whole nother perspective on endurance racing. But yeah, going to a GP in Spain is bucket list stuff for a lot of people.
Have you raced at Jerez before?
I haven't. I went there October. I went there for World Superbike 2 seasons ago. And remember when all the KTM 390 Cup kids went over there and did the World Finals? They did it that weekend.
I knew you'd been over there for some reason. Yeah,
man, I loved everything about, like, the entrance to the place. Getting in, getting out was easy. But the track itself, I just sat there, just trying to figure out a way I can get on a bike just to go there and ride it. I think as I've gotten a little bit older, I want to go ride some of those places I never got a chance to. I guess in a way, Greg, I'm almost like a bit of a historian on that stuff. Like, I remember so many great people riding all these neat tracks, and just to say that you kind of gone and ridden some of those places is kind of fun. So yeah, I would definitely put Jerez on top 2 or 3 of my bucket list right now.
Yeah. And as you heard me say, Jay, Bradley Smith is getting his second of 5 wild cards for 2019. I was curious to know, if he's going to ride like the full-blown 2019 RSGP machine, or is he 1 or 2 steps ahead of the factory bikes?
So I really don't know until I turn up, although my bikes have stayed down there from the last test. So unless the guys are bringing any ideas in their backpacks or carry-ons, I believe that I'll be racing a full-blown 2019. So I will always try to be 1 step ahead of the factory team. That's our objective. That was our objective from Qatar, but the whole project got put together a little bit late. So from Jerez, let's say I'll be starting on the same bike as Aleix and Andrea, unless something changes in the next few days, which is likely. And then maybe from Barcelona, I'll be racing something that's like a 2019 plus. And then let's say going towards Aragon, which will be my last wild card of the year, in late September, I could be racing the 2020 there. But yeah, the whole idea of the test team is to be always on something that's one step ahead of the factory team if we can build enough parts and we're going in the right direction to be able to do that.
Sometimes that can be a great thing. Sometimes it can bite you in the hiney, right?
Well, yeah, I almost feel like we're past the point now, though, where testing has become a lot safer. I think that when back in the day when they were trying to make huge advancements in a lot of things, like right now, we're seeing advancements, don't get me wrong, but the huge advancement part of our sport for now, I don't think is as big as it was. Remember when testing used to be kind of a dangerous option? Like used to think that, oh, we're going to be giving this part a try and it's going to be some whatever it could have been. I remember testing the early fuel injection stuff that was so bad and it was so sketch. And yeah. And so I think that his job going and being able to ride a bike that might be just ahead of the factories, I think it's a really good thing, but I think it's fine tuning a lot of stuff. And it'll be interesting to see if it would be like motor configurations and things moving. Like when he says the 2020 bike, a lot of the stuff that they do motor wise doesn't really get done till the test in November. They have to come up with an idea of exactly what they're going to run for the following year. I think it is, Greg. Right. So they test in Valencia, then they go to Sepang for the last test of the year. So when he goes to Aragon, I really wonder when he says the 2020, if it's a big chassis change that they made or some gigantic step in electronics that they have found. Because you got to remember, a lot of the team guys that are within team walls have all worked with or along other manufacturers. So there's always knowledge being brought from one thing to another thing. I mean, that's why even a test rider, like somebody like Bradley, he has a lot of experience on other bikes. So probably uses that to his advantage. But yeah, I think that the fact that it's really cool. I mean, how cool would it be to know that you're testing stuff that is directly transferable and you're going to be on a bike that might be, I'm not going to say that because it's newer, it's better, because that might not be the case, but you might be trying some newer stuff over a race distance on a race weekend to see if it works well enough for the other two at the next round.
Yeah. And, Aprilia is going to test Monday after the race. So, and that's Bradley's regular job, right? So I was kind of curious, like, all right, dude, so what do you do? Because Jason, as you know, Bradley is a racer, right? I mean, he's a racer and he didn't have a ride and this was his next best option. And he is racing in MotoE. So I was really thinking to myself, all right, dude, so do you let it all hang out on race weekend or, is Monday on your mind?
I mean, there's no point in me turning up with anything but my best. And I feel that the hunger inside me from watching from my sofa from Argentina and from the edge of the track there in Austin, there's nothing that I could possibly do to hold myself back, just considering Monday. We have a 3-man strong squad. If I'm not doing the testing on Monday, then I can always pass it on to someone else. But this weekend is my chance to get racing again. Like, I've missed it. I feel that I've had a great lead up into it in terms of I had a test there last month. I had a test there 2 weeks ago for 2 days. Like, I'm building for this to be a good weekend. So, yeah, we'll take it day by day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday will be what Monday will be when we get to it.
Pure racer, right?
Well, it's so funny because I don't know. I mean, I get so many people that come to track days and come to race weekends even, and they'll do 2, maybe 3 6-lap races on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and they're just wiped out. They're like, they can't even get off the chair in the pits anymore. They're just wiped. And then I want to tell them, well, imagine coming back tomorrow with nobody here, and now you got to go out and do 100 laps of testing. So I can't, the buildup for him right now, he's probably built up to this crescendo of like, now the MotoGP race weekend's here. The next time he's on a bike, he actually gets to race. It's not going to, and it matters. Like, it's time practice or QP1. or time practice qualifying 1, however they do it for the first round there of practice. He's built up for that, and he's done all the testing, and he gets to go to a track that he's familiar with. But then, I mean, especially if you get a result, I guess it could go both ways. If you get a result, you'll want to go out and have a little bit of a good time Sunday night, but you can't because you got to get on a bike Monday. If you have a bad result, where's the motivation when you come and get on the bike on Monday? I really like how he said right at the end, we're just going to put everything into the weekend we can, and then Monday will come and we'll deal with it then, type of thing.
Yeah. And with all that answer and all the conversation we had after that, I was like, so what's your expectation then heading into the weekend?
I mean, I always have a high expectation of myself. I believe that the work that I've done over the last month or so should put me in a lot better place than I was in Qatar. Qatar was definitely a tough one to swallow. Just kind of riding around at the back and, ending up falling off at the end of the race from being stubborn. But yeah, I have high expectations. Alicia's been able to put that bike inside of the top 10 in the first 2 rounds. He qualified, I think, 13th or 14th, so Andrea's been pushing inside the points, so the bike's more than capable of being inside the points. I've had the experience of the last 4 days, so why not be able to do the same? So if I can run as close as possible to my full-time, race teammates, then I think that would be a successful weekend.
Now, Jason, lingering in the background, you've got to keep in mind is there's only 22 bikes on the grid full time in MotoGP because you remember who was it? VDS, I think, ended up backing out at the last minute, and MotoGP wants 24 slots. So lingering in the background, not only is just a race result for wildcard rides, but also Aprilia is the only team that doesn't have satellite right now.
I agree. Yep, they are.
Is that right?
They're the only one because KTM does. Well, Suzuki doesn't either, do they?
The Suzuki doesn't either, yeah. But there are 2 spots available for them to possibly field, maybe 1 bike, maybe 2 bikes. And of course, MotoGP wants it. So, what Aprilia needs, and actually Bradley kind of hinted on this, Aprilia needs the bike in the top 6, getting exposure on TV. So the rest of the company can see it. Not just trackside, but see it on the television screen or whatever, your iPhone or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that could, they're owned by Piaggio, which is a huge, huge motorcycle/scooter manufacturer. They have budget. If there was a wave of passion inside of an Italian company that says we need to shift more resources into MotoGP, we're close, you never know. It could, within the course of this season, translate into a full-time ride for him as the 3rd factory rider or satellite team. It lives as a possibility is what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
I think that if you're Bradley and you still have the desire to race, you don't want to get tagged as just a test rider. I think that that's a very hard tag to get on. Like, I don't see Gintoli ever really racing competitively again, like trying to do a full season and winning championships. And, you look at Michele Pirro, he does all the Italian Superbike stuff for Ducati. He's got such a sweet gig because he gets to go race a full championship and then he gets to test ride, World Superbike bikes. He gets to test ride MotoGP bikes. I think that is the best testing job that there could possibly be. But I think with Bradley, if he's motivated as he sounds like he is to want to come back and, he wants to be competitive this weekend. He doesn't want to just ride around. Maybe that's the case. But if he does a really good job testing, this is the hard part, I think. If he does a tremendous job testing for Aprilia and they see a lot of things moving forward with their program, they might want to pay him enough to keep him in the role that he's in now, as opposed to paying him to have him run, on another bike. I think that's the balance that Bradley has to find of what is more important to him. Is it more important that he becomes, back into MotoGP as a rider? Or is he happy with, doing the electric bike races, the testing, and then getting, a certain amount of wild cards? You just don't know where people's balance in their lives are at the age that they are. I know he's still young, but he's saying only 28. I think that there'll be that's what I mean. He's still young. So there's a lot of decisions he might have to make. And it really is all the whole thing will be based off of the results. If Aprilia starts getting amazing results and they get that top 6 consistently or in that top 10, but every manufacturer is going for that. Every manufacturer is trying to do the best they can. But if Bradley really helps the team do that, they might say, look, we'd love to have you on our satellite team racing, but you're way more valuable to us right now with what you've shown us to be our test rider and get a certain amount of wild cards and so on. So yeah, it's an interesting thing.
So that's kind of Bradley Smith's story, Jay. Now let's transition a little bit into kind of what we can expect on the MotoGP side of things. And I'll have Bradley kick it off because I asked him to put his commentator hat on and tell me what he thinks the race will be like in Jerez this weekend. And to my surprise, dude, he did it.
So this is a tough one because I think that this new surface is definitely going to play into Yamaha's hands. And looking at how well Valentino had rode and Maverick's been riding in the opening few races, I believe that Jerez does suit a more Yamaha style, especially with this new surface, because they always suffer with rear grip. So I really do believe that they're going to be competitive, especially Maverick. I think this place suits his style. I think it's make or break weekend for someone like Jorge, after 3 difficult opening parts of his season. Let's say if Jerez doesn't go great with the Honda, then we'll be having a few bigger question marks on how that Honda transition has been going. And we can always rely on Mark to be pushing up the front, especially to make amends after a difficult Austin. So I think it's going to be exciting for everyone. But I think that we could see a Yamaha victory this weekend.
All right, Jay. So there's Bradley leading off the conversation. What do you think?
Well, it's weird because I think that Maverick has all of us a little bit mesmerized by his outright speed when he wants to. And then there's those weekends where every weekend he's been up front and then he just doesn't really show in the races, but we know how good he is. It's an interesting comment from Bradley to me about the Hondas because he obviously knows he's within the inner walls of MotoGP, obviously so much more than you and I are, Greg. But from the outsider looking in, to me, it looks like Honda made pretty big steps this year. And we've talked about this multiple times now where, Crutchlow didn't even really get to go testing and yet puts it on the box right out of the bat in Doha. Arguably would have been probably second to Marquez possibly at Argentina had the jump start violation not happened. And in the early stages of the race at Coda, he was right there with the leaders as well. So I don't know what the big question mark is around the Honda because it looks like it's improved in top speed. It looks like it's improved in rideability. I love the fact that Bradley thinks the Yamahas are going to do well. Obviously, that's because of the smooth surface. And with it being smoother, Greg, there's not going to be the bike will be able to put the power to the ground a lot more consistently than it would if it was going over a bunch of bumps and things. So I love he didn't really talk about Ducati, but I think the one thing I pulled more than anything out of that was the make or break for Lorenzo. I don't know if it's make or break just yet. What are we, round 4? He's had some struggles. He went really fast in testing at Jerez early in the year. I think he was second or third. I think Nakagami was quickest at this test, wasn't he? They tested here.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't know if the surface was new when those guys tested here. I honestly don't know. But I think the Hondas are probably going to be pretty difficult. And if it's any indication to me, if Lorenzo's back to some health, he's going to have good vibes from this place. He's always gone well. And the Honda has proven that it's been pretty good this year. Either way, it's a coin flip. He didn't mention any Ducatis, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. So, it could be a big fight at the front again between, and didn't mention Rins either. So I don't know where you start really. This MotoGP season is so
up in the air, isn't it?
So good.
It really is up in the air. I just,
when you see Kenny Roberts Sr. come out and say it's the best time ever that he's ever seen for MotoGP, that tells you something, doesn't it?
I don't think there's a question. I mean, can you imagine if Rossi wins? Again, it's going to be that same scenario every weekend. Like if Rossi wins, the whole place is going to get torn down, which will be amazing. But I just think, watch out for Rins. Suzuki's got some things figured out. In talking to Bradley, they do some testing alongside Suzuki and Gintoli. And I know that at the last test, Bradley was saying that he was significantly quicker on the Aprilia than Gintoli was on the Suzuki. So, who knows? I mean,
maybe a smooth track is good for the Aprilia too.
right.
I mean,
and maybe Aleix, puts the thing up there on the podium. I mean, I just think there's so many things. There's a lot of question marks, including tires and all that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the podcast. Yeah. But there's a lot of good question marks, and I think that's what's exciting. It's not that we're going to Jerez talking like we spoke before Texas, and we said, who do you think is going to win? And I was like, Marquez is going to just whip everybody. And he did until he made a mistake. And the chatter about the Honda, Jason, is the front end. Something's funky with the front end. And that's
and I hear that, I do. I do hear that. But to me right now, it still seems like they've made a step over last year's bike.
Yeah, agreed. And they definitely have. And maybe it's a simple solution that they just need some more time with. And maybe there was a test team working on it, in the last week that we don't know about. And that's GP. I mean, that's the budget of GP racing. So,
yeah. And I think that with Moto2, Moto3, all that stuff, I mean, everybody kind of talks about when they get back to Europe, when they get back to, to Spain for this first kind of round of the European round. It's kind of where the season starts for a lot of these guys. Granted, the season is 3 races in, but I mean, now they got a bunch of races closer together. Not as much travel as it would have been to go to Doha and then Argentina and then obviously here in America. So now they'll be able to get into their programs a little bit easier, into how they want to, their daily life becomes a little bit easier. So there's a lot of things going on. I did see, not to change the subject too much, but I did see that Passini took the ride that Scott Dixon had in Moto2. So he got a result at Coda, didn't he, Greg? With finishing 4th in Moto2, and Dixon got hurt. So I thought that was an interesting thing to see. We're going to see Matteo Passini back on the Moto2 grid this weekend. So there's some storylines in Moto2, Moto3. It's going to be a busy weekend.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to unpacking it all next week's podcast.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's going to be great. But, this last weekend, you and I have been covering, and we got a great chance to talk to Jared Meese last week after the Dallas round. And I think the big question, Greg, is when it comes to the American Flat Track Series, we've all been kind of watching the series a little closer because of all the road racers that have kind of gone back to doing some of that. And JD Beach, when he didn't make the first 2 main events this year, I was scratching my head going, there's no way this is going to happen. But they went to a new place in Phoenix this last weekend. And Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park in Chandler, Arizona is a place where we've seen a lot of the trophy truck races. And they called it the SuperTT, which anybody that's familiar a little bit with dirt track, TT tracks, usually have a jump in the middle of them with a right-hand turn. The one at Daytona to me is sloppy. It doesn't look very good. I've seen some like the Peoria TT and things like that, but I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. I love the track. I thought it was fun. The racing was entertaining, but more important, our guy JD went out and pretty much followed Briar Bauman for the majority of the race at the 25-lap main. He was 3-4 seconds behind him, Greg, for most of the main, and then all of a sudden, with about 6 to go, JD just kept the hammer down and ended up passing Briar Bauman, who looked pretty competitive or looked pretty dominant throughout the day. He goes on and wins his first AFT Twins race for the Essence and Racing Monster Energy Yamaha Yamalube team. Bauman was second. Jared Meese, our guest from last week and constant contributor to our podcast, third. Finishing where he kind of said, Greg, he's like, I kind of finished where I should have finished.
Yeah, I saw that. That was
the other. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was good. He's like, I deserve third, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And going back down through the field, we had Carver, Jeffrey Carver 4th, Jake Johnson 5th, Bronson Bauman 6th, Cale Kolkman. I don't even know Kyle, but I gotta meet him because he's right here from Ventura. I don't even know him. It's
Kolkman,
it's weird.
Yeah, you got to get on it.
Yeah, I don't know him. Yeah,
obviously he's from Kolkman Racing too, so that's a self-funded effort. So
yep, and he's here in town somewhere. So Brandon Robinson, Sammy Hulbert was 9th after getting a provisional when he didn't get through on his semi. Did Sammy? How about Larry, dude? Larry Pegram again in the points, finishes 10th on his bike. Vanderkool, Brandon Price, Fisher, Henry Wiles, James, who struggled at this TT, had issues, didn't finish. A couple other non-finishers there, Monaco Pearson and Colby Carlisle, who I saw big crash at the beginning for a few of those guys. PJ didn't get through. He fell off in his semi and didn't get through. But did you get to watch JD's ride?
Yeah, it was unreal, dude. I mean,
unbelievable.
Yeah, and to hear him tell the story is pretty great as well of that race, because it's kind of like when I was watching it, I'm going, what's he doing now? Like, you could just kind of tell the switch when the switch went off on JD, like, oh, he's close, and started reeling him in and goes, I think I can win this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it looked like it. I mean, he just started chipping away at it. And even in the semi that he ran second in, he was keeping him honest and just kind of kept pushing and pushing. I got to wonder too, and, I got to wonder fitness-wise. I mean, we know how super fit JD is, and that track on those bikes, it looked pretty physical. And we saw I saw a lot of crashes that night, a lot of red flags. The crashes were pretty big because of the speed of this TT and the size of the jumps. I think when JD tested there, and you probably know more than I do, but when they tested there, he was talking to me about how they were breaking shock mounts and stuff because the jumps were so much bigger than what they normally have to deal with, or frame mounts or something. They were breaking subframes. They were breaking something. And, but we did see a lot of big crashes, but overall, I like the facility, and I'm very intrigued to watch it go back there and see how it does in the future.
Yeah, I also think it just plays to the versatility of the racers. That you're not just a flatland racer, that you can go over the jumps. And I thought that Mies's third is a good, solid position for him. It was Yamaha's first win in 40 years, which was really great, story for the sport and all that kind of stuff. But Jay, I did have a chance to talk to JD about it. And, for those that have never heard JD speak before, he does stutter and he's not scared of it. He leans right into it. And this is a bit of a long bite because I asked JD about the entire day and how things went. And here's what he had to say about his first American flat track win.
Yeah, it was, for one, it was hot. It was real hot. It was kind of a bit busy day a little bit just because it was the team's home race, and I did a lot of stuff with American Flat Track and the NBC Sports guys, and so yeah, we had a lot going on, and the day kind of started out not too bad, not what I was hoping, but we were third quickest in each time we went out on the track, and every time we went out we kept getting faster, but so did Breyer and Jerez, so it kind of made it hard, but yeah, we got second behind Breyer in our semi before the main, and I mean, I was feeling good. I was honestly, I didn't think we had a bike that was going to be able to win the main event, just because Breyer was riding really good, and going into the main, I knew if I wanted to have a chance to try and beat him, I was gonna have to get a good start and get in front of him and just try and block and ride wide and just try and do whatever. And I knew if he got the start on me, he was gonna be gone. And I knew we had a bike that we could get on the podium, so I thought it was going to be a dogfight with me, Jerez, and Wiles. We got going, and Breyer got the start on me, and I was sitting second, and he inched out a gap, and I think it got up to about 3 seconds or so, and after about 10 laps, he wasn't really pulling away from me. I was like, man, maybe it's not going too bad, but I mean, he still had a good gap on me, and the halfway flags came out, and I was like, all right, I gotta make one push. I mean, or one more push. I mean, I can't quit yet. So I started pushing, and started just trying to be smooth and brake a little deeper and kind of trying to roll through the turns better. And after about 5 or 6 laps, I was gaining on him. I'm like, oh man, this is kind of going good. And so I was getting excited and kept closing in. And when the 5 lap board came out, I was about second behind him. And I mean, I was like, okay, I got this. I got to make something happen. I mean, if I'm this close, and just kept chipping away at it, and I could see he was kind of making a few mistakes, and with 3 laps to go, I was right on him and kind of tried to go for a pass, but couldn't quite make it. And with 2 laps to go, I mean, I was right there, and I went in deep into the turn, and he went deep, and just kind of got offline a little bit, and so I just put my head down, got by him, and came across for the white flag, and I was like, all right, I got to do a perfect lap, and I ended up doing my fastest lap of the race, the last lap, and came across the line in first, and God, it was a great feeling.
That's one of those races, Jason, where you're like, okay, I have a game plan. If I can just get in front of that dude, I should be good. But that dude went away. And I just love hearing the fact that like he's like, all right, well, I guess this kind of is what it is. And then he just kept plugging away. It's a, deep determination from that kid.
Oh man, JD works incredibly hard, as we both always talk about, and this is what's really going to help him, I think, even on the Superbike. Just the confidence of getting a win. We talked about it the other day on our MotoAmerica podcast that winning breeds winning, and when you haven't won in a while, I know he won last year on 600, but this year he's on all new equipment all the way across the board. He's on a Twins package now, and I know he's ridden the Twins in the past, but I'm talking about for the full year with this Estenson Racing team, and then he's got his R1 now. And the one thing that you'll never question if he's part of your team is his work ethic. The kid works so hard on his fitness and his mental and all that stuff. And you could see him just kind of chipping away. And I think it's really cool that, he said there that he ran his fastest lap of the race on the last lap, which, after a big, long event like that, that's hard to do. And going through back markers and some of that stuff. But think about how many laps that guy has on a turn track back in Kentucky, when all those guys are doing, and you draw on that experience. I think, when you look at the length of the race, Greg, it's I'm trying to see here.
Well, like the total,
I don't have
the total time.
Yeah,
you
the
mean?
total time. I'm just looking for it. Yeah,
race 16 minutes. 16 minutes 12 seconds was
there. You go.
Yep.
So he goes out and puts in probably 30, 40 minute, 45 minute, motos on the turn track. So 16 minutes isn't much, and you could just see it in that race. He just chipped away.
He did tell me, I think he said that he and Briar Bauman had a little chat on the podium, and that Briar said that his rear was spinning a lot, that he just kind of overworked the rear. But the fact that JD knew after he got by Bauman that he had to put that lap in and did his fastest lap of the race, which was a 38.4. Bauman did a 38.3, but that was way earlier in the race. And only Jared Mees was his fastest lap in the 38s. That was a 38.9. So really those two, the class of the field. And it's great to see, because you and I have known him a long time. I was coming back from a MotoGP race in 2008 after doing some stuff for CBS with MotoGP.
Yep.
Brno, right after he wrapped up the Red Bull Rookies Cup MotoGP World Championship. And he was so young and his family couldn't travel with him. And so we both had a layover in Atlanta airport on our way back from the Czech Republic. And I bought him his first celebratory meal at Chili's in the airport. And even then he was committed to eating a salad and and surprisingly enough, I had a burger and fries, but I don't want to talk about that.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
But wow. I mean, we've known him. You and I both have known him for a long time and know his work ethic and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, I don't know. To me, it really warms my heart when I see someone that I like a lot put in so much work and then it pays off. And to pay off this early in the season for Estenson Racing as well, and the crew that they've put together and the amount of resources in that team is great. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, the team needed it too, right?
Of course. Yeah.
The team needed it. I mean, in the singles class earlier in the evening, I think Ryan Wells finished third, so they had a good weekend. They finished, he's on the podium as well. So Estenson had a good weekend, and they kind of needed it, I think.
Yep.
And
now
I need guys like that because they put so much into it.
I did ask JDJ if he thought that this win, the feeling, the confidence would bleed over into his MotoAmerica Superbike effort.
I think it's honestly, I think it's gonna be good. I mean, with moving up to the Superbike class this year and starting this new thing with dirt track and having all this new stuff going on, I think it's gonna help me a lot. Just give me the confidence I need on the Superbike and knowing that. I mean, because I work my butt off, and to get that win on the dirt track bike feels great. And I mean, I know that first Superbike win is gonna feel really good, and I think that this kind of just makes me want it more now.
And then we had like a good laugh when I said, dude, how sweet would it be if you won your very first AFT Twins race and your very first MotoAmerica Superbike race all within a 7-day time span?
I don't even know if I'd be able to make it back around after the race. I mean, that definitely would be great. I'm not gonna. I'm trying not to think about it that way though, just so I don't have that extra pressure on me. But yeah, no, that would be sweet to do that.
What do you think, Jay?
Oh my God, it'd be so great for him. I mean, racing is absolutely everything for JD. It's everything. So everything. The reason he wakes up in the morning is to go race, and I mean, really, versatility wise, I can't think of anybody that would probably be better than JD right now. I'm sure he's handy on a motocross bike, but between dirt tracking and road racing and all that, he's such a versatile rider and such a good guy on top of it. So I think everybody just pulls for him. And again, with a little bit of weather that might be coming in, you just never know. But I think JD will be at the front. Again, he's like Matthew. I think JD will be at the front this weekend, regardless if it's wet or dry. So yeah, I think it could definitely play into his hands. Where it wouldn't shock me. Would it surprise you if he won this weekend?
No. I mean,
no.
I'd probably lose my mind in the booth for sure.
I would too.
But
yeah, that'd be great.
There's, Josh Herron did really well on that bike last year at VIR, and I think JD could do the same, and anything could happen. That's the good thing about our series too. Question. It's not just like one or two people up front winning races all the time. Our series is very unpredictable.
It is. Speaking of unpredictable, we are going into Vegas for their final Supercross this weekend. Thank you, JD, for being on, by the way. Mm-hmm. We're going to round 17, Greg, of the Monster Energy Supercross Championship, one that you and I have been covering a little bit this year because we have our little fantasy Supercross, and we've had Chad Reed on a bunch, but we're going into the final round. And round 16 this last weekend at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, saw Cooper Webb again win with Zach Osborne. Tremendous ride from Zach. I know you're good buddies with him. Mm-hmm. He ends up second. Tomac, again, don't even know what to say. Crashes twice in the same spots. Unreal. I know it's racing. I get it. Mm-hmm. I'm a rider. Yep. I understand. Yep. It sucks. But and he's still in the championship. That's what's crazy is that you can document Eli's mistakes, and the guy's tremendous. And I know it's racing, like I said, and it's hard. But again, finishes third after a couple, crashes in the main event. Baggett fourth. Marvin Muscan fifth after crashing in turn one off the start. Marvin has just been on the deck too much the last 6 rounds, it seems like, as well. Ken Roxon never really got it going that night. Sixth. Joey Savacci, again, was fast, but kind of ends up seventh. Josh Grant, good ride for him, I think, finishing eighth. Cole Seeley, Justin Hill rounded out the top 10. I don't know, Greg. People keep on talking about how lucky Cooper Webb is, but one of the biggest things I always talk about when I'm working with riders, new or old, is I want to anybody that I work with, I want them to be the smartest. They don't have to be the fastest. I want them to be the smartest, and you create your own luck. And so far this year, Cooper Webb's got 7 wins. I mean, his average finish is right around third place. I think he's done enough to win the championship without people saying that he's just been lucky as well. You got to have a little bit of luck anyway.
Couldn't agree more with you on that one. And I think the race from New Jersey last weekend showed that Cooper can ride within himself when he doesn't have a winning motorcycle. And he just, the fastest lap of the race went to Tomac at a 51.9. And Tomac had his chances to get out front and win this thing and made those two mistakes. And by the way, post-race, not the one that you see on TV, but later on, Supercross Live has some stuff. And he just laughed at himself. He was like, I can't even believe that happened. He said, I might be able to get away with one, but two in the exact same spot. He goes, I just couldn't believe it. And Cooper didn't have the outright speed to win the race with no incidences, but he was there. He put himself there. And if people are going to fall around you, which meaning make mistakes like Zach Osborne and Eli Tomac did, and you have enough speed to win, then take the win, take the points. Now it's 23 points. It's not, he didn't wrap it up, but it's pretty close. It's 26 to win and 23 for second in Supercross, different from our series. And he didn't wrap it up early, but he's got a really good shot. He's just got to do the smart thing. It's not a layup necessarily.
Got to ride around.
Yeah, you got to ride around and make sure you just make the main and and finish in the points. But I just think
if Tomac wins, he's got to finish. If Tomac wins, he's got to finish. I don't even know where he's got to finish so far back. It's, the thing I liked about the race more than anything is that when Tomac took the lead, Cooper kept pressuring him. Like Cooper wasn't going to let him slow the pace down and bring a bunch of guys into it. He didn't care. I mean, he's a pretty savvy guy. Like, he always knows where his competitors are and where he wants to put the bike. It seems to me when I watch Webb ride. And I think as the year has gone on, his interviews have gotten quite a bit better. He's kind of humbled himself out a little bit. Almost, it's almost like he's had somebody talk to him a little bit about, don't have such a grudge on your shoulder because you're a tremendous rider and you're going to be a champion, and just believe in that. And it's kind of come across to me anyways in his interviews as well, that he's much more complimentary of the guys that he's riding around. The guy was so sick too. He'd had the flu all week. So, and he looked crooked. He looked really ill, didn't he? Like
he did.
In the post-race interview,
kind of mellowish and worn out. Definitely post. Yep.
Yeah. But he's got, in my eyes, he's got two hands pretty firmly on that thing now. And I don't know how many people picked him to win it at the beginning of the year, but
I can't imagine many. Yeah. I know that, let's see, if Tomac wins it, Cooper's got to finish 19th or better to outright win it. If he finishes 20th of 22, let's see, that would net him 3 points. 3's the difference. That means he and Tomac would tie on points and Cooper would win it on race wins.
Yeah. 7 wins to 6 it would be at that point, I believe, Greg. So yeah, you're exactly right. And generally there's always a couple back guys that don't finish. I think that it would take something really out of the ordinary. It'll be interesting to see how Cooper rides, because sometimes when you have that big of a points lead, you can go after it a little bit, but he might find that window of where 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th might not, there might be big gaps in there where he can kind of slide himself in and just kind of get around. Because he's just been so smart. He's done all the work. This is the position that you've put yourself into now to win a championship, where you don't have as much pressure on you at the final round, having a bit of a points gap. And Tomac did a good job to get himself back into 3rd to obviously continue to give himself a chance. Musquin is obviously out of it now. And you're always talking about, especially the last 3, 4, 5, 6 races of the year, the guys that are kind of out of the Supercross championship start putting their focus a lot more on the outdoors.
Yeah.
What do you feel? I feel like Tomac goes in there and wins this weekend, but I don't think he's going to take any big risks to do it. Is that kind of what you're feeling?
That's what I think. Unless there was some big paycheck on the line. They have this weekend to race, 2 weeks off, and then they're straight back to California for outdoors. So, I mean, everybody goes out there to race to win. I understand that, but there's got to be a little component in the back of your brain that says, okay, for Tomac, I know I'm up against it. All I can do is win this race, and then let the chips fall where they may to give myself a chance to win this championship. But I think he understands the way Cooper's riding right now. I mean, unless some disaster happens off of the line, he gets into the last chance qualifier, and then disaster 2 happens and he doesn't even make the race. Okay, now the pressure's on because there's 23 points to be made up. That means Tomac would have to win. That's the situation. So I look at Cooper and I'm thinking to myself, Jay, like, okay, he won the 250 West Supercross title in 15. The last time he won a championship was 2016 at Outdoor in 250. So it's been a little while, but he's now 23. So, I'm kind of thinking to myself, he has experience on winning championships. He knows how to pull it. But you actually had a gap, of what, 4 years, I think, from when you won you won it in 97 and then 01. Is that right?
Yeah. You have gaps. And
but does it feel the same? You know what I mean? Can you say, oh, I won a championship 3 years ago, so I know how to do it. It's like in the bank. Or, being that young, I wonder if he's kind of like, oof.
I don't think you think about it. I can't say that I thought about what I did 4 years prior. You're kind of living in the moment a little bit. You learn from your experiences and so on. So I think after the 2 years that Cooper had, where he was basically a non-factor the last 2 years, a lot of injuries and stuff, jumps on this vacant Ryan Dungey bike and just goes out there and does the business. It's pretty impressive.
Well, with that said too, Jay, credit to Red Bull KTM for taking the chance on Coop. Really.
100%. Yeah. It probably has something to do though with the fact that Marvin and him, they were doing a lot of training together, right? Aren't they? They're training buddies too.
Yeah, down in Florida
with Alden Baker. Yeah. So there was probably some dialogue between all that kind of fraternity of people, I think. Anyways, but it'll be an interesting thing. I think Vegas is always a good finale. Track will be hard packed as usual, and so on.
Good.
I got a crazy message.
What?
Oh,
we're done. Are we done with this podcast then?
G-Dub.
Are we? Huh?
No. I got a message. I got a message from Travis, and you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. He basically is saying the leg breakers are on the way. Basically, if you don't pay up. Now, mathematically, you still have a chance. But in our fantasy Supercross, Greg, I have to say, you've been a bit abysmal this year. I expected more out of you.
I've been a bit abysmal, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're 41st.
A solid.
You're 41st out of 53.
Am I solid?
Which, let's be fair, in the wide spectrum of things, and if we look at sort of race results from the past, you're hitting above your pay weight right now, so you're doing pretty well.
You're ridiculous.
But Travis needs some money, and
Travis isn't first of all, Travis, or in our rmfantasysx.com pool is Beat G-Dub. He's not getting the money.
Yeah.
Okay, the money is going straight to the Road Racing World Action Fund for Air Fence to help keep riders safe. So, all right, calm down. Anyway, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I apologize. What were you going to say?
No, I love it. I think that what you should do, though, is you should make the donation and give Travis a little something extra just so he can go out and have dinner, or just something that'll taste good to him after he knows that it came from you, All
right,
that's just my opinion.
I'll tell you what.
That's what you should
Here's
do.
the deal.
Yeah.
All right, if Travis is listening, if he can get to a MotoAmerica race, you and I will carve out some time.
Don't suck me into this.
No, I'm sucking you into it, stupid.
I just want to meet him for this.
Well, you and I are going to carve out some time, and we'll go to dinner with him. Yeah. Okay, one of the nights we're there if he can get to a MotoAmerica race. If not, we got to find out where he's from, and we'll get it sorted out. But I'm going to give you, Jason, the opportunity to sit with your boy and just go ahead and rail me. Just beat on me all night long, and heckle me. That's fine. I'll take it for and my treat. I'll treat dinner. Okay. No lobster.
Yeah. Hey,
no lobster. Do you understand what I'm saying, Doctor? No lobster.
When you do these points, who do I got to contact at this RM Fantasy Supercross? Because it's almost like you've done the points. I want you to do this for me, okay? All right. No, just do this for me. 556 points plus 41.
556.
Now, to me,
plus 41.
Plus 41.
That's not 597.
Yeah. Why do I have 582?
Ooh. Maybe because you were penalized for being an asshole?
It could be. And if they would just come out and tell me that, that would be great.
Okay.
But right now I have no explanation. And they've got me scoring 41 points. They've got me like...
Yeah, because I have my hand in my ear right now, Jason, because did Viking 43 pole vault you? Did she leapfrog over you and push you down into the third spot from last week? Is that what happened?
And what I want you to think about with that, okay, is that she actually did.
Yes.
But here's my problem. She scored 30. She was behind me going into last week, and she scored 36 points. I scored 41.
Yeah, I know.
Now, you don't need to be a brain surgeon, G-Dub.
Nope.
They've totally bamboozled me and screwed me out of my points. I closed the gap on Fuller. I closed the gap on him, and yet it looks like I have fallen further behind. So
wait, hold on. Did you screen grab last week? I mean, do we know that what you're saying is true? I guess is really the question.
100% true. I had 556. Just shut up, Greg. If I was second going into last week, how can I be third when I scored more points than the person that finished second this week?
These are questions I cannot answer. The universe is a very complex place.
Well, who's the one that started this fantasy crap? Anyways, it was you. So you need to get on the blower. You need to fix this.
Yeah, right away. Hold on. Let me get on with technical support, rmfantasysx.com chat right now. So why don't you just hold on until I come up with a resolution?
I'm all over the back of Fuller now, and
theoretically,
I'm hoping that he chucks it away. Can you believe it? I'm horrible at this fantasy stuff too. I'm horrible at it. So for me to be second, and our group, did you see our group moved up?
Yeah, a little bit.
We're like 5905 now at almost 7,900 teams. So big move by the Greg's Garage podcast.
Huge move.
It's been a lot of fun doing that this year. Actually, it has been. We're always texting each other like, "Hey, everybody, don't forget to put your picks in." And this and that. I'd definitely do it again. Would you?
Yeah, definitely. And I wish we could really figure out how to do this with MotoAmerica too. And maybe we'll get something going before the season's out and getting people into it. So when we get to the 2020
I got
season,
a guy. He's already sent me a...
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I got a guy.
I'm not going to mention last names, but Steve, my boy, he's already kind of got a little bit of a platform set up. He ran it by me. I haven't got a chance to totally look at it yet. But he says, hey, you and G-Dub, look at this. This might be something that we can do. And... we just got to get on it.
Must be an email that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what time that is, Jay? It's time for Quick Shift segment presented by ARAI Helmets. We'll rattle off some questions over 60 seconds, and then you're going to hear this little thing right here. And yeah, we get to do all that stuff. But did you know, Jason, that for 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets? And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards, but they also pride themselves in a blend of engineering, tech, and human craftsmanship that makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects you better. Your head is worth the best. Hey, up there in like the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, starting to become riding weather. So make sure you go visit ARAIAmericas.com for more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs. ARAIAmericas.com, because you owe it to yourself. All right, Jason, I'm going to kick things off because on WorldSBK.com, which is the official World Superbike site, they had an article about an interview between Radio Marca and team manager of the Kawasaki World Superbike team, Gwyn Rhoda, hinting at the possibility of a new Kawasaki coming in 2020 to answer to Ducati's V4R. It was a bit cryptic, but he kind of hinted about it. What do you think about that whole scenario, but now manufacturers having to build special bikes to go after the V4R?
Well, like we say, they've already been building kind of special bikes, but they've built it within a price point I think that a lot of people can afford. I think now we've seen what this V4R is and how good it is. And everyone's going to say it's only in the hands of one rider, but the bike is obviously pretty good. I'm hoping that it doesn't totally kill the economic growth that we've kind of started to see, in the sense that we're starting to see a little pattern where more people are kind of getting out and looking at bikes, buying bikes. Our Superbike series, pretty much across the board, from Australia to England to Japan to everywhere else, has been pretty close. World Superbike's been the only one that hasn't been. I'm hoping that it doesn't just blow the price points out of the water to where people can't go out and afford these really unreal motorcycles, because we hear that, we hear Cowie is, we hear Honda is, we hear Yamaha is all coming out. We hear everybody's kind of coming out with a new bike. I think the bigger question, Greg, is that if that is the case, do they just open up the rules again, in the sense that, create one rules package for everybody else, and we stop messing with integrity of trying to speed people up or slow people down? Just like, let's just one rule package. It's the same for everybody. Go and just leave it at that.
That'll be an interesting question to answer. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Greg, due to the resurfacing of Jerez that Bradley Smith mentioned earlier on the podcast, Michelin will be bringing 4 fronts and rears instead of 3 options. Could this be an issue for Michelin this weekend?
It definitely could be, because I'm not sure how many. I mean, the good thing is it's a European race, so they can roll in an extra semi or two, in terms of volume, though. That's really the question. If for some reason they missed the mark with 4 different selections and they had tire issues, we've seen MotoGP in the past. That kind of harkens back to 2016. In the press release that Michelin had, Jay, they were talking about this kind of takes us back to that first year that we came back into MotoGP, and we had some issues from time to time with data. So it's a little bit of an unknown from Michelin. I think they've kind of set the stage early that they're taking a wait and see attitude. So this is about the biggest safety valve they can have, because in the rule books, it says that you're allowed to have as much as 4 different tires being able to be selected. But if they have 4, Jay, and there's only one that works, then the demand for that one tire is going to be very high. So they need to bring it all. Yeah. What do you think?
Greg, whenever I hear about new racetracks, we hear a lot about the tires being tore up, because a new track does tear up a track a lot different, because the edges of the pavement or the edges of the tarmac are so much sharper. We didn't really hear Bradley talk too much about tire life when he was talking about it. So I wonder if they've just kind of sussed it out and it's in already good shape, because that's really the reason why obviously they're bringing these. They're giving people more options, because they have to see how these tires tear up. And I want to just see a great race. It'd be fun to see a race where tires aren't the only thing that's going to kind of determine things. It would be good to see these guys be able to go all out. But I know bikes are putting down a lot of power, so it's hard. Greg, KTM has options on Miguel Olivera's contract going into next year. He's not signed on with KTM though. The Tech 3 team,
he did sign, yeah.
He hadn't. Yeah, he did sign on with the Tech 3 team until the end of 2020. I think it's a great move. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting that Bradley Smith told me, he was like, if you actually look at Moto2 right now, the wave of incredible riders has already been sucked out of Moto2. There's no one at the caliber of a lot of the riders that have come out the last couple of years. So I think if you look at that and you say, okay, Miguel Olivera has already impressed KTM, let's keep him in the fold. Let's keep him working on the motorcycle. Let's keep him in the development direction. I think it's good. And I also, obviously, KTM's commitment, to 2020, their 2 other riders already have contracts. It's Cyrene, I think, is the only one who's on a 1 year. So I think it's a good move. What do you think?
Well, I think Cyrene will be gone. So if you look at it, the Moto2, who would they bring up in order to be in that spot? And if you're a Moto2 rider, even though it's MotoGP, with what you've seen from KTM kind of so far, would you be in a big hurry to jump on that? I think that right now the money is probably pretty good. There's relationships with the riders that they have. Maybe a Binder. I mean, maybe Binder moves up with this squad next year and takes Cyrene's spot. Don't know, but it would be nice to see them consider pulling from another spectrum other than just Moto2. It'd be nice to see them pull from, maybe pull a World Superbike guy or somebody else just from a different series and see how that kind of works out, because we haven't really seen that at all. Once you're in that MotoGP paddock, that's where you're at.
Yeah, I think the difference is going to be that KTM has 4 riders on those motorcycles. Cyrene, I think, is contracted directly with Tech 3, and being a Malaysian rider, they might keep him around for that. I mean, MotoGP is not immune to politics by any stretch of the imagination. So that might happen, as much as if Cal Crutchlow turned around and retires at the end of this year, 2020, that all of a sudden Bradley Smith becomes an option for the, I hate to say the token British rider, because Cal is definitely not that. But as much as the series would like an American in there because of the audience, they want a British rider in there as well. So those things are factors. There's something to consider in the class. And so I don't know if Cyrene's going to go away or not. I mean, obviously you think from his results, but I think that's left to be determined. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, listen, for those who want to get out and see some racing, you should. JP and I will be in Alton, Virginia for the MotoAmerica VIR race. So come out and see us. It's a 2-day event. The weather's going to be good. Don't worry about this 50% chance of rain in the south. That just happens all the time. And it's right on the North Carolina-Virginia border, so it reaches a lot of different states. AMA Pro Hill Climb is in Champion, Pennsylvania. Supercross wraps up in Vegas. Can Cooper Webb make it happen? We're looking forward to seeing that. MotoGP is in Jerez. NHRA is in Atlanta. Motorcycles are with them. GNCC in Peru, Indiana. British Superbikes in Alton Park. I bet you're looking forward to that one, Jay. I know I am. And AMA East Hare Scrambles in Monticello, New York. And there's so much more good racing. So get off the couch, put the podcast down after we're done here, and go out and watch some racing. Right, Jay?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a good time right now, and it's hard to keep up with it. So I'm glad we got all the little social media channels in order to do that. You and I aren't going to have much time to watch too much this weekend, as we're going to be busy, but we'll definitely be catching up on it for the podcast next week.
That's right. So thanks everyone for listening to the podcast this time, and we'll see you, next week with more great stuff coming at you. Say bye, Jay.
Later.